because of reasons like this, because of perception being so sort of subjective in a way, or at least it's variable among individuals, right? It's one of the things that leads to us being sort of skeptics in a lot of ways, and being skeptical of knowledge in particular. So this phenomenon has come up in a lot of different scenarios. In like the older variations of this, there was the notion of, evil demons that were deceiving people, or like, am I just living in a dream constantly? Things like that. In the modern world, this is manifested in terms of some, like, are we just brains in a vat that are, just being fed information and then perceiving the world a certain way? Or most recently, it's like the notion is the whole world just a simulation. So like the whole plot of the Matrix, basically, are we just living in a computer simulation of the world, or are we really living the world? Right. So there's another one that's come around. I don't know if you've heard about this one, but I read up about this as I was sort of researching the topic. Have you ever heard of the 5-minute hypothesis?
Enlighten me.
So this one's actually being skeptical of the notion of memories and history. So it's basically, what proof do we have that the world, that all of the universe isn't actually only 5 minutes old, and we were just, that universe was, built, or it was, it was formed with all of us having the perceptions of having this life and this history and everything behind us.
The first thing that makes me think of is a lot of what a lot of Christians will actually say in regards to the Bible, how it's like only 7,000 years old.
Yeah.
They're like, well, it's 7,000 years in God's years. That's not the same as our years,
Yeah. So it's a variation on some of those same sort of structures. But basically the whole idea is, how can we be the skeptics are saying, how can we know that we are actually perceiving what we think we're perceiving, that we, the memories we have are real, all of those sorts of things. So I guess I want to dig into a little bit of that. And so how can we trust any of those things, right?
Right, because the way we remember things is not exactly the same way as like a chronological video, for example. It's not like...
No, it's not.
It's like 6 minutes of you and I talking, and what I'm probably going to remember from this is like a couple of concepts and words that are like outside the realm of time. Time is just helpful in me experiencing those concepts and remember, but what I choose to remember will kind of almost be entirely subjective and based on my own internal biases, really.
Right.
So it's a fundamental question of what purpose does it solve to help to think of the universe as only being 5 minutes old? Well, I'll tell you what it reminds me of. It reminds me of the power of now. What if the universe was even closer to that? What if the universe was only 5 seconds old?
Yeah. I don't know why the period 5, maybe 5 minutes is like short-term memory span or something like that. I don't know where that originally came from.
Yeah. Well, I think that it's a lot helpful to think of the universe as being actively created right now. Like right now. And the concept of now is so foreign to us, I think, and that's why it's so spiritual. And like you hear about live in the now, like... Yeah,
and there's a lot of different theories about, well, physics in particular, that, is there even such a real thing as the past, or is there just a series of like nows that exist in different forms, right?
Yeah. I'm going to go out on a huge limb and I'm going to bend your mind a little bit.
Go, please.
So, it obviously makes sense to think of the past as influencing the present, right?
Yeah.
But have you ever thought about how your future might be affecting your present?
Okay. Now, I've heard about this in the context of different theories of time travel and causal loops. So that's what it makes me think of. Do you want to go down that road?
Well, I'm going to use the term, I'm going to think of music, actually.
Okay, tell me.
So it's so interesting to me in that, so I record myself playing backing tracks a lot as a way of practice. I'm going to go in somewhere with this.
Okay, please.
In the performances that I enjoy the most, I end the backing track on the root note or some harmonious note.
Right.
On the ones where I don't end on the right note, the entire track seems like it's out of place. It doesn't matter actually what's happening in that time loop, so to speak. What matters is what's happening at the end. And it actually doesn't matter how I start either. What matters is how I end. That determines whether it's enjoyable. And you'll hear this in music philosophy a lot of the times. Where
I do a lot of, I've been in the business and the technical world a lot. And whenever I go through different preparations for presentations, most of the attention is actually given on how to give like a really good ending to the presentation. That seems to be what people care the most about, is what you leave people with, like the way you sum things up and the way you do the right wrap up, rather than the intro is like kind of important, and the body is like, yeah, you're expanding on ideas, but most of that people are going to forget. Most of what they're going to remember if they stick around is what you end it with.
Right. And I think to tie into achieving a transcendental spiritual purpose, which I think is the fourth step in your principles of philosophy, is, if you have something high to aim towards, like a good note to end on, it's going to subsequently influence all of the notes that you...
By the way, I'm not going to get to it yet, but by the end, I'm going to propose 4 different solutions to this problem, and we're going to think about how we want to evaluate each of them.
Absolutely. Okay. So I actually really want to hear that. So I'm going to quickly wrap this up. So I'm going to hypothesize that in this event of planning, where you kind of envision the future and you visualize. Conor McGregor was actually a mixed martial artist who was huge into The Secret and visualizing his success.
Right.
Which is why in the middle parts of the 2010, 2020 period, in that middle range, he was so successful, is because he visualized, he planned his future, but in a way he so meticulously envisioned the future that it influenced his present. So it's almost like, we have memories, but we also have visions of the future. We also can visualize what it is that we want. So how is that different from a memory?
Oh man, like there's such a rabbit hole we could go down with that, but
why aren't we going down these rabbit holes? This is fun. This
is, but I also want to be able to like put a time box on these episodes. But
this is true. By the way, everyone, I'm Sean, and I'm the chaotic one. Wolf's the incredibly logical and organized one. Not that I'm illogical, but
that's only to a point. But let me just say real quick about that. Like, here's a thought for you. What if, when you're visualizing or you're, you're planning or you're thinking of the future, what if you are actually experiencing futures that do exist and not just in your head? You're like tapping into some future reality in those cases. Absolutely. And you're actually experiencing it within your own mind.
Oh, absolutely. And I bring up Jordan Peterson again, but he has a future authoring suite.
I've heard about that, and I kind of want to check it out because I've heard good things.
Yeah, it's super cheap. It's only like $7, roughly about that, depending on the sale.
Yeah.
But anyway, as far as visualizing your future, I mean, to bring it all back to something pragmatic, the whole reason we're having this discussion, I imagine, is so that we can kind of, figure out maybe what perceptions we want to communicate with other people. I mean, is that kind of...
Yeah, that's a big part of it. And try to understand even what it means to perceive something.
Right. And that's a good question, right?
Yeah.
But here's the thing. What if we couldn't communicate? What would be the point of perceiving? You're reminding me of, a tree falls in a forest and no one hears it, Right. But it's like that tree still happens. Maybe that tree falls on like a badger's nest and kills the mother badger. There's only like one orphan badger that makes it. It has a completely different life. It causes a chain reaction.
Well, I think part of it too is about meaning, right? Because if there's no one to perceive it and to write a story about it or to pass it on, like does it even matter that the event occurred, right?
Right. Well, I think that's why communication plays into perception. Yeah. I'm communicating with sounds which you're perceiving. So I think communication, and that goes back to telepathy. It's like a form of... Telepathy is you could almost argue it's like a form of communication without perception.
You're hurting my head, but I get where you're going with that.
Yeah. Anyway, that's my job. If I'm hurting people's heads, I'm making them think. Awesome. You do that to me all the time. You sent me like the text message about, what is it, the ghost that couldn't perceive anything?
Yeah. Right. Well, yeah.
Anyway, you sent the thought experiment to me, and I was like, my head hurts. I can't do this anymore.
Okay.